How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Jesse Nyberg podcast. Today I'm here with Jake Pressure, a super talented designer, someone I've been following on Twitter and IG for quite a bit. Excited to chat with him. How you doing, man?
Good, man. It's cool to finally be on here and talking with you, for sure.
Yeah, you're one of the people, there's about 5 of you out there that back and forth we go for a while and then it finally figure it out somehow.
Yeah. It's just hard lining up with like work and
yeah. Like, do you hold yourself to your own like kind of schedule, or how do you kind of go through your work day?
Yeah, pretty much, which essentially means that I just work all day.
Yeah.
Even like after years, I don't really have it like an off switch.
Mm-hmm.
I just make like little breaks of time to break it up, like whether it be dinner, movie. But I always resort back to designing.
Right. It's hard because I try to be an advocate for not doing that, because I know like ultimately it's not the most positive thing to just always be in this weird, like never full break, but never almost full working, because you're like back and forth blending the lives. But it's really hard not to. And at the end of the day, if you want to be doing that, you're always going to do what the thing you most want to do at that moment. Like, you're not going to deprive yourself of working because someone says it's bad for your mental health or something, if you really want to at that moment.
Yeah, I think my biggest problem is I don't know how to be bored. Even if I'm watching a TV show and I get bored or it's been too long, like I'll feel like I have to go design just because it's something I can like keep my mind on. And I just don't know how to not do anything.
Right. I think the reason I'm such a workaholic or whatever is because I feel like I have a real addictive personality in general with other things. And if I don't fill my time with a lot of working and stuff, I'll probably do things that aren't as good for me in my spare time.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm the same.
I was curious, what's your kind of story for getting into design originally? Because you've been designing for like 10 plus years now, right? Or so?
Yeah, I'd say like consistently probably like 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I started probably like 10 years ago because I was just like a skate rat in high school, and everyone wants to create their own brand in high school. And so I remember my friend had a burned copy of Photoshop that he stole from his grandpa and gave it to me. And I installed it, and I was like, it was way harder than I initially thought, right? So I was like, that's chalked.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at the time of like Warped Tour and all of that. So I just like would make fake or do my best to make fake tour passes to get in. And it worked out. But that's pretty much all it was. And then I actually dropped out of high school, took a community college class to learn the programs and get like Adobe certificates.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I just pretty much never stopped.
They let you take those courses without finishing the high school?
Yeah. Well, the way I got around it is I was enrolled in a GED program at the same time. So they were just happy I was taking any classes
right,
at that point.
Right.
So yeah, I got my certificates, and then that's about it. But I never really wanted, I guess, to be a graphic designer. Like I never wanted to be like a career. It was just something like I just wanted to create stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With like streetwear culture back then, like Stussy and stuff, like logo flips.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big entry point for a lot of people. Like even my friends that I know that are all into like the older like rave culture and streetwear stuff, they don't know how to design like to the, I guess, standard that's some people may hold it to, but like all their albums are like logo flips and shit, just like ripping like graphics from like, like you always see the like Tide logo ripped for like the rave graphics and shit. And it's because it's something where you can feel creative and like learn the programs, but you don't have to do the hard part of like trying to figure out everything from scratch.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I would do. I would just like recreate like the Walmart logo, for instance, and then I would like forward motion to like changing the wording.
Yeah.
And then people would think that's cool because they recognize it as the Walmart logo, but it says something completely different. And yeah, people just thought it was cool, so I ran with that for a good part.
It's also like a weird I maybe you would classify it as this, but like kind of like the Mandela effect when you see it and it doesn't really make sense to you, but you think it should be looking one way, but then
Yeah,
it says like a
100%.
completely different word or whatever. Did you so then technically you kind of started with like merch design in a way, even if it wasn't like what you're doing now, you started for the idea of wanting to design clothes, right?
Yeah, that
And
was like always the goal. I just wanted to make t-shirt and make cool stuff that my friends would wear.
and then in between that, now that you're kind of there again, but on a more I'd say like professional scale or whatever you want to call it with the like collective and everything, but in between that you were doing a lot of like esports stuff, right?
Yeah, so I came up through like I started designing. I was working at a smoke shop, I think, or I started working at a smoke shop, and I would just bring my laptop and
Mm-hmm.
grind out like Call of Duty headers. Once I got decent enough, I wanted to go like revert back to apparel design and kind of like bridge the gap between streetwear and gaming, because back then, gaming culture and like apparel was fairly cringe. I
Yeah.
would say like it was just like super like the normal person wouldn't wear it, and so like that's the gap I tried to bridge. So I just reverted back to like apparel design and kind of like full swung that.
Right. I feel like a lot of the stuff from before it was like that weird material that's kind of like a thin like soccer jersey and it would just be
Yeah,
like
they were like
some
athletic.
esports shit.
Yeah, like athletic polyester blends that were just like awful feeling.
I feel the same way because you seem to do a lot of the merch for like creators and
Mhm.
like influencers or whatever you want to call them. And they had the same problem, I think, where I don't want a shirt that's just like your head or like your channel name or
Yeah,
something. Like it's kind of weird. Even if you love that person, it feels like awkward to just be like,
yeah,
here's just a profile. Or when our artists, it's just the album in a square or something. And I'm like, you didn't really
yeah.
put in any effort into this.
So that's the really fun thing about like creator merch, because you're taking their brand and you're trying to convert it into something wearable that like even their audience wouldn't wear.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because like if like you said, if you just throw like their YouTube profile picture on a shirt, like sure, like the diehard fans might buy it, but like the dude
Right.
walking through Walmart's not gonna know what the hell you're doing.
Right. Unless it's like some kind of irony, like play, and you make it
Yeah,
like
exactly.
memey or whatever. I feel like, I don't know if it's just the people that you kind of work with like the 44 Castle or just that community of types of designers who do like merch and creator stuff and esports. But I seem to have noticed there's kind of this pipeline from like people who did esports to now doing like merch design stuff. Do you think that that's the case at
Yeah,
all?
I think as a community, people grew up
Mhm.
right, and there's really only like so many avenues you can take if you want to like continue graphic design after like teenage years.
Mhm.
And I think that becomes like, well, now it's like NFT artist vibe or like agency vibe or like freelance apparel marketing. You know what I mean? Those are pretty much like the three roads you can take.
Yeah.
Um, which is definitely cool that so many people take any of those roads and can just continue making what they want to make.
It's funny because as you said that, I pictured a person for each of those things just in my mind that perfectly fits that, like the agency dude who doesn't post online anymore, because he's
Yeah.
too busy at the studio or whatever. I think you fit the mold definitely for the streetwear merch type shit. Do you I know you still post online and stuff, but obviously like less consistently than sometimes in the past, probably because busy with the actual work and stuff. But do you ever still feel like you need to keep up with that stuff, or do you kind of feel like it doesn't really
Um,
matter anymore?
if I didn't have to worry about that, I feel like I would be able to like 10x whatever I'm doing.
Mm,
It's like, oh, just because like I grew up like doing graphic design and posting everything
yeah,
and like maintaining like a fan base or maintaining likes or interactions, community, whatever. Like the work I do now is like heavily NDA guarded. So it's like I can spend 3 to 5 months on a project and then wait another 3 to 5 months for it to release. And I could post it then, but like by the time it releases, I'm almost like an entirely different person,
right.
like creatively at least.
Yeah, that I hate that feeling because it's kind of bittersweet because makes you feel like, oh, I've grown a lot since then. So maybe I feel more insecure about this or something because I've gotten
Yeah.
a lot better or I've switched styles. But then on the other hand, I think that's not good though, because that thing still exists and I need it to hold up as something that people
Yeah.
like for more than 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. I think it also goes into like the classic creative not liking their own work,
Mm,
um, which can happen at like the very end of a project, but you give that months and you're able to like look it over again and you're like, I would have done this
mhm.
probably completely differently.
Yeah, I always seem to learn like one specific small technique, whether it be in like Photoshop or something more analog, just as I finish something that I could have used it in. And it
Yep.
bothers me so much.
Yeah. My biggest thing is like personal work that I post. It's just like I'll post in the second it's live on either Twitter or Instagram. I'll notice something or think of something else that could like either replace it.
Yeah.
And I'll go through like this 30-minute dilemma. Like, do I delete it and just like repost it in a week and hope people forgot?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a struggle.
I've seen that before. I think you would tweet like, I'm sorry, I couldn't handle it. Like I misspelled this letter or something. I had to remove it.
Yeah. It's, cause like I have to, like when I post, since I don't post often, that when I want to post something, I'll just like eagerly post it and tweet it
Hmm.
without like proper revision, even though I've been looking at it for the last like 24 hours. And
Mm.
yeah, just
Do you feel
slips.
like since you post less often now, each thing has more like weight to it and you think that
Yeah,
it needs to be like perfect?
yeah, 100%, which sucks. But I'm kind of getting better at that. Whereas like, as long as like I know it's good and like I rock with it,
Hmm.
then the likes, comments, or feedback or whatever kind of doesn't matter as much. As long as like it fits the vibe and like does what I want it to do,
Hmm.
then I'm pretty good with it.
I feel like I remember you on Twitter like a while back following you even when you're doing the esports stuff and all that, and you seem to get like a big traction on there at that time and continuing into now. When you were doing that stuff and getting a lot of that good feedback or seeing people be like, oh, like you're the best at this style and this and that, was that kind of validation? Like, does that stuff motivate you, or is it hard to kind of even like feel it when it's just coming through the internet like that?
At that time, it was still like heavily imposter syndrome vibe. So like
Mm,
that was like kind of motivation to keep going. Like, okay, I can actually make something that people think is cool, even though I don't think it looks cool.
mm,
Um, but now I don't know. It's Twitter has become like more of a headache in a sense. I like Instagram because it's less political. There's less drama.
yeah.
You just post, you can almost forget about it. But Instagram has like a lot less community, I feel like,
Mm,
in the sense of like Twitter. And I don't
right.
know if that's like born just from Twitter group chats. Because there are Instagram group chats, but they're not on like the same tier, I would say,
Yeah. I also
which is
think it's
interesting.
easier for people, not just like fans or like the people supporting someone's work, but the other creators in that same like niche or whatever. It's easier for them to support each other through Twitter because it's so simple to just like retweet or send stuff
Yeah.
around rather than putting something on your story or like sharing something on Instagram. It feels a lot more like I really have to like this to like put it on
Yeah,
my own
exactly.
shit.
The thing about Twitter, I feel like that actually helps a lot of people is you get more like personality. So you'll like follow an artist on Twitter and then you'll see like their normal thoughts
Oh, right.
behind things where like Instagram's very vague. Like a lot of artists will just post something and they won't even have a caption or like
Mm,
reply to comments and like you don't really know who they are in a sense. Where Twitter, you follow them, you see their tweets, you see their replies, you can kind of like get a judge of character, which makes people like feel like they know you. But I feel like it's
yeah.
a big benefit opposed to Instagram.
Right. Yeah, because even tweeting, I'll tweet things I would never say on Instagram, like
Yeah.
just complaining about something or like whatever it may be. And I guess some people do that with their stories and stuff. But
Yeah.
if Instagram or YouTube or those other sites didn't have stories, it's like something that could go away quickly. I feel like Instagram would be way too hyper curated. It already kind of is, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't know like some people you don't know anything about them. Like I've had people on the podcast where their IG is a lot more mysterious or whatever, and like you don't really know. And I didn't even know really how they were gonna look or anything, you know? 'Cause it was just so secretive.
Yeah, and I feel like when people do complain on Instagram, it's like it feels very serious because they're taking the time to like make a black background, make the text, all that. Where like Twitter, it's like it'd be taken either way because you're just posting a tweet in 5 seconds. Like it doesn't come off that deep.
Right. Yeah. People go like, you have to make the infographic about like, this is what's going on in this country and why you should need to know.
Yeah. And if it's like more than 3 slides on your story, you're like, okay, this person's like really into what they're saying.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, I've replied to some of those things because I think that stuff's important. Like there's certain causes that I think need attention. But I fear that sometimes people are doing it out of like guilt. Like they think that if they don't put it on their thing, that people are going to think that they're bad. Like I saw a thing, it was like racism is bad or something. And it's like, of course, everyone like knows that. We don't need like it's like saying like, you know, like don't murder someone or something.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, especially with Instagram, a lot of things feel like a cop out in a sense. You know, like it just feels like content.
Right.
Opposed to like actual like purpose design, which is fine. But like there's just so many people, like you said, racism is bad. Like, yeah, we know it's bad. But it's like just to generate clicks. So I don't know which one's worse, really.
Right. Right. Yeah. I feel like I've been into the past year, I've definitely gotten more into making content and stuff for that same reason, but kind of opposite approach. It felt like the good design work, it mattered, but it still would never get the same. Like every once in a while I'd get like a crazy poster or something that would get insane traction, but that would happen once for every like 3 reels that would happen to, or 3 like just clips I put up. So it's really sometimes demotivating to only treat it as like this portfolio gallery thing when that's not even what the platform is trying to like curate or whatever.
Yeah. And more often than not, the post that'll get the most traction is something like you chefed up in a couple hours opposed to like a few days, like rescanning, retransferring.
Right, because it's easy to digest. That's exactly how I feel about it's like food, exactly, because it's simpler. Everyone can eat it. It's like fast food, and then the gourmet shit that like you need like a more attention to, and like something maybe you want to look at all the small details. People have these like short attention spans, so I find it few and far between the creators who can do very complex, good like art that also gets received well on like social media.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a double-edged sword with like content because especially like Instagram, I like archive and delete a bunch of posts because it's like you said, you're like correlating like a feed, like a portfolio essentially, and they all have to like resonate next to each other. And that's something that bothers me with like my own work. But a lot of people will just like pump out like just like a bunch of posters that are like when you're scrolling, they're eye catching, but like as a designer, if you look at it, you could tell it's like pretty quick, like nothing too deep, and it works. And it's hard to not fall into that to gain traction and gain like followers on that app.
I feel like I post more than I would like to for the sake of keeping the reputation with the platform to when I do post the thing that actually matters. I'm not like completely out of the loop of whatever's going on.
You almost have to mix it so that the pieces that are like less, I guess, technical. So like the ones with clicks will build up to the one that actually is like means something to you so that you hope it gets traction. People realize what they're looking at.
Right. Because I've gotten hired for projects from reels that were like design adjacent that client liked my work, but they never would have saw it from like the logo project I posted or whatever it was. So how does your job work with like the 44 Castle stuff? And I wonder if you could explain that a little bit. And also, is it like a job or are you all just like this collective of freelance people?
So 44 Castles is like a creative collective of people, pretty much just like a big friend group. And we all like specialize in different things. A few of us are part of a merchandise company called Revolt. So that's
Right.
where like all the
Okay.
creator merch comes from and stuff. But yeah, as of now it's just a creative collective of like a bunch of us who just like freelance and like work together and collab, which is really fun.
And then the Revolt is like your job technically,
Yeah.
and do you work there full time, or
Yep.
how does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Full time salary type vibe.
Is that is that so? It's technically like a studio or agency, and their main thing is doing merch for artists and creators and things like
Yeah,
that.
so less of an agency just because we do the design in house, we do production in house, sampling, all that. Like pretty much cut and sew, everything is done in house, which is really cool because not only are you designing, but you're creating like actual garments.
Okay, so the manufacturing as well as the like creative is done.
Yeah. So
That's dope.
yeah, it works out both ways. So you're actually not only are you designing, but you're able to like learn like the manufacturing side and like textiles and stuff like that, which is sick.
I'm sure that gives you guys a lot more knowledge or creative freedom on projects too, because maybe creative restrictions sometimes because like we're not going to be able to do this or whatever, but other times it's when you're designing for a shirt or an album or whatever, it sucks having to work externally with whatever's going to make it, because then you have to worry about them not like fucking it up basically.
Yeah, that's definitely the hardest because, I mean, essentially we can make anything that we can tech pack. The only limit to that is A, if it'll sell, or B, if like it'll do, or like how many revisions that sample will need to get to the final product. Because sometimes that could be like 3 months, sometimes that could be the first try, like 2 weeks, So it definitely determines on how crazy like an actual cut and sew can be, in my opinion.
Do you guys propose like on the farther end of the spectrum craziest, so the revisions will bring it back to somewhere in the center maybe?
Yeah.
How is your approach to that? Is that how it is? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most of the times, like we shoot for the stars and we end up just going back to what we know.
Yeah. Have you felt that in general though, like the YouTube creators or the influencers, people like that have gotten more adventurous with like what they want as along with the design becoming more like out there and like actually good?
Design wise, yes. Garment wise, I think they're starting to. But I mean, there's still a lot of people who don't like boxy fits, don't like cropped anything. There's definitely like a few creators who let us like get super creative. Like we made a cool pair of double kneed pants with like screen print on them, which was really sick. Pretty out of the box for like a creator merch.
That's dope. Like some Carhartt type
Yeah,
shit.
exactly.
Yeah, that's tight. That's what I would do if I was like I would want to definitely call back to like the Stussy, like early Supreme, like
Yeah.
Carhartt whip shit if I had to make some kind of capsule collection or whatever.
Yeah, that's what we try to do just because we know from like a consumer standpoint that isn't a fan, they would like it, and then the fans will like it because obviously it's associated. So hopefully it's a win-win.
Yeah, you kind of have to find a balance between making it wide enough or like cool enough to capture the people that wouldn't buy it for no reason, but then not have it stray too far from the person to where the person that's a diehard is like, where's the name? I want to rep like, Jake Pressure or whatever. And this is just a cut and sew like bag or some shit.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of being too like adventurous off-brand. Like the theme or whatever, I'll just get hyped about, and I'll kind of like over bake it to where it doesn't like yell their brand, and then you'll have to like take a step back and like reintroduce their brand more heavily, which makes sense. But
I guess it depends on probably the size of the like creator. Are they like directly talking with you guys ever, or is it some kind of team?
yeah, so most of the people we talk directly. Sometimes there's a team, but yeah, most of the time we get to like talk to them individually and like figure out what they want.
Okay. What has been like the coolest person to work with, or like your favorite project you've worked on through Revolt?
Probably Mr. Ballin. Just because his podcast is awesome and like the vibe of like his aesthetic is very sick, very like spooky horror vibes. And it was cool like taking some of his like big podcasts and like stories and like turning them into like visuals on Apparel. It was a really interesting process. And then I'd say Schlatt, just because he always has like some quirky idea and it always like bangs. It's always like fun to work on, which is sick.
That was the one that you did kind of like the sports stuff, right? It was
like, like the collegiate stuff.
Yeah, that was cool. Really cool. I think Mr. Ballin, that's funny you say that because I didn't even know who that was till like 2 weeks ago. My friend was sending it to me on Discord. And then I was looking through some of your stuff in preparation of this, and I saw the one where it's like the guy shining the flashlight or whatever, and it's something about like going into the woods or whatever it was.
Yeah, the Bell's Canyon tee. It's super funny. That story is actually pretty sick.
It's weird when you don't know about something and then you find out about it, and it's like that red car theory or whatever it's called, where now you see it everywhere. Because it's been like in my algorithm. You mentioned it. Another person was telling me about it, but I'd never heard of Mr. I didn't know how. And it's just the internet's crazy too, how compartmentalized it is, because something can be that large and a main population has no idea what it is, and it's just existing.
The internet's crazy because the second you see it, it's like it knows you see it, and then it just feeds it to you. Like it's crazy.
I know you said you do a lot of design and you find it hard to be bored, but if you're not just relaxing, what are your main kind of hobbies or things that you like to do outside of design that help you at least somewhat take your mind off of it?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I find one. No, I kind of go through like different, it sounds kind of manic, but like every month I have like a new hobby that I'll get into, and like I always return to like building keyboards.
Yeah.
Or like painting furniture or like just random bits. Like last month I decided I was gonna order a bunch of like screen printing stuff, just to screen print tote bags on my balcony in my apartment. Just like random bits like that.
Like the keyboard stuff is cool, but I fear like if I get into it, not only is it, I know you talked about it, like not only is it what do you call it?
Like a money hole.
Yeah. What's the word? A wormhole or whatever, where you dive too deep into it, but also it's too like design adjacent. Like it'd be an excuse to still be at my computer, like working on a thing that's related to it.
Yeah. Something that I've done recently. So like all my like work, like commissions, whatever gets done in my office. And then all my personal work I do on my laptop in the living room. Just to like kind of separate the space.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And it's kind of made like me doing personal work more enjoyable, just because it's like completely separate. I don't have to worry about like seeing work files and being like, I could do this instead.
Right. Do you have your own desktop, or do you also use that laptop to hook up to your office?
I have a PC, and then I use like a MacBook just for personal and like work stuff when I travel and stuff.
Same. I used to only be on the MacBook, and then I was like, no, I'm going to build a desktop because I don't want to spend like 16 grand to get a desktop Mac or whatever. But then on the other hand, the laptops, it's so, especially with the M1, the new ones, it's like, or M2, it's almost impossible to find a reason to buy a PC laptop instead, even if you like them more.
Yeah.
They're not really better.
No. Like unless you love gaming, I don't see a point in buying like another, like a PC.
Right. And if you love gaming, you're probably playing on your desktop if you're like serious about it anyway.
Either that or you're comfortable playing on like a PlayStation or Xbox.
Right. I've noticed
a lot of people are.
I've done a similar thing with the so I game on the PC like quite a bit, but I go in and out of it. There's times where I'm obsessed with like a game, and it's a good thing because I work less, but it's a bad thing because I work less. Like it takes up a lot of, like I just started playing Overwatch 2, and like I've already probably put like 20 hours in or whatever in the past like 2-3 days. And I'm like, geez, I gotta relax. But the problem is with the PC games, and the reason I bought a PS5 recently is they're in my office, the computer setup is here, and I have Discord open, and in between rounds I'm checking the email, for no reason. With the PS5, it's like when I'm playing 2K or like Ghost of Tsushima or some shit, I'm not worried about like the client revisions because you can't be. I'm in this like other world almost.
Yep. I'm the same way. I've been playing the hell out of like Apex,
Hmm.
but I'll have Discord open. So like I'll tab out, reply to somebody, tab back in. I'll tab out, check my email, tab back in. And then I'll just get fed up and I'll just close the game. Cause I'm like clearly like I should be doing something else.
Right. It sucks too to have that guilt because that's all built into like just capitalism and like there's no reason for us to feel like bad for
Yeah.
enjoying ourselves every once in a while.
Yeah. There's a long part where like I didn't do anything other than work. Because I like the imposter syndrome type beat like I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I'm gonna make sure that like every power in my body that I can just keep doing this and
Mm.
make sure like I nail everything, I lock everything in, everything's done, I over deliver like everything.
Right.
Which has luckily gotten better.
Do you think I struggle with this because I am the same way, it sounds like, and it seems like a lot of people in this, especially people that do freelance stuff, it's like that meme, I quit my 9 to 5, now I work 24/7. Like that's
Yeah.
the shit. But it's hard because I want to tell people that they shouldn't do that. And I do. And I don't usually add a lot of nuance to it because when you add too much like caveats, it ruins like a point or whatever.
Mhm.
But I fear sometimes that you can only get to that realization with doing the thing, like doing that, like negative, like burning out or whatever, or working too much because it's like Jim Carrey being like money doesn't matter or something because he's like a multimillionaire. Do you think that you need to kind of do that at one point, or do you think you still would have got where you are without that?
I think going through that made me more disciplined and kind of made me like my workflow better and like my time management, at least regarding like timelines and stuff better.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, I don't know if I would be at the point I'm at now without like that 20-month grind of just like putting it all in, you know? So I don't know. I'm happy where I'm at now that like that part is over and I'm like confident enough to know like I can deliver and the world's not going to catch on fire if I like
Right.
step out for a couple hours, you know?
It seems like you need a few learning experiences too. I've talked to clients where I used to be such in like a bad scarcity mindset where I couldn't deny any projects, even if they were probably like red flags, because I was worried like they wouldn't hire me later or I wouldn't make
Yep.
money from some other thing. And I started to tell some clients sometimes like, oh, this is like way too much right now. Can we work on this next month? And then they say, of course, like we'll wait for you, or no, like they'll just hire anyone. And then it's probably like not so good anyway if they just want a random designer. But when I tell them no and they're like, well, I'll wait, and they say like, yeah, that's fine, it makes me like regret never doing that before because I'm like, oh, it's not the end of the world. Like I could
Yeah,
just tell
exactly.
them,
And like
hold on.
the response isn't going to be like, okay, well, let's blacklist this person.
Yeah.
But I didn't take commissions from design for like years because I always worked like a full-time job. Design was just like a hobby. I got home, I'd work a 9 to 5 essentially, and then come home and work a 5 to 12 of just like personal graphic design. And then I worked in the cannabis industry doing like product design and stuff for a few years. And so I never took commissions. And I was always afraid. I was like, if I fail a commission, it's going to be raps. Like people are going to like, you know, and I'll just be like, nah, I'm busy, like stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
it's like, even when that Eminem project hit me, like I had like this sinking feeling because like it's something that you have to do no matter
Yeah.
what. Even if you fail it, you have to do it.
Right.
Right. And then so I did that. And that was like one project that I did that turned out like insane and everyone was happy about it. That I looked back and I was like, okay, I can like actually do this.
Was that Eminem project one of your like biggest things where when you did it, it was like you felt like people were like, oh shit, he worked on like some Eminem shit?
Yeah. I mean, that was like the first project where like my friends and like my family were like, oh shit, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. Cause before like I mean, you name drop like random creators or whatever, and they're like, all right, cool. Like, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. But this was like the one time where it was like everyone knows what it is and who it is. And they're just like, that's
Right.
sick.
That's what's funny about it is you can work with, Mr. Beast or whatever, but if you're like a boomer and you like they value legacy media so much that you could
Yeah.
be on a Mr. Beast video and they would value that way less than if they saw you on like fucking like Jimmy Kimmel or some shit,
Yeah, exactly. You could be in the audience of Jimmy Kimmel and it's still like more noticeable to them than being like a main character in a Mr. Beast video.
Yeah, even though it's like anyone would know that the Mr. Beast video or a creator of that size would like get you infinitely more
Yeah.
traction or whatever it is.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, there's a divide in like media on that sense. Even like people like our age, like I have friends who like aren't tuned in
Oh,
like
okay.
online culture like pretty much at all. Like just what like Instagram feeds them, and then they don't dig too deep and they just keep
Mhm.
scrolling, you know.
Yeah, it's weird. Because I felt that when I've done like stuff I thought was cool or worked with people that I have to, when you start to tell them to, and then you have to explain it, and you're like, oh, I guess it's not that dope if I have to show you who this person is and like try
Yeah,
to
when you're like
convince you.
explaining when you're explaining the project, and they're like, "Wait, who is this?" And then you're like, "I don't even want to explain it anymore 'cause it doesn't
Yeah.
matter."
Yeah. And then like I've had my aunt or some shit text me because I did this thing with like Acer, which was like a little like video thing, and they were like, what the fuck? Like you're in Hollywood or whatever. Like this is the crazy. And I was like, this is not even dope compared to this other shit. But
Yeah,
I guess if it's cool for you, that's what matters at the
yeah,
at the end of it.
yeah. It took me a minute to get to that point with like the without the instant gratification of like your peers being like, "Yo, that's
Mhm.
sick, good job." You know, like getting to the point where you can pat yourself on the back, and that's essentially all you need. I feel like it's
Does the Revolt stuff then like does that comfortability of that full-time salary leave you like satisfied enough to not want to like look for something and like try to always be
Yeah.
doing stuff on the side?
This is probably an unpopular opinion, but like I don't really ever. I say that now because I have this comfortability, but like I don't want to freelance
Mm-hmm.
just because like I was brought up so like uh almost like middle class, you know, and now I'm like at a point where like I'm doing good, and like I don't want to go back to that uncertainty of like having good and bad months.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to like do what I have to do to keep having good months.
Right.
You know, like, but who knows? Like, I could full-time freelance tomorrow, let's say, and like it could be great, but it's still uncertain.
It's funny because I feel like I have a similar story, but it made me react the other way. Like I grew up pretty poor, a single mom, and all this, and I was so used to like never always being okay without having money, like through
Yeah.
school and everything. That I'm like, oh, if I don't fail, like I could go back to the grind. Like I know how to eat top ramen every day.
Yeah.
Like I'm not tripping. Like I like this lifestyle, but I don't suffer greatly from like.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same. Like I still wear blank t-shirts and, you know, Dickie pants and skate and Vans. Like,
Mhm.
I remember like in high school, like me and they would give you these lunch tickets in LA. Like if you made,
Yeah.
if your family made like under
The free
X
ones,
amount.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would sell them and then go across the street for Taco Bell or, you know, buy cigarettes and be hoodlums or whatever the fuck. But
Yeah, dude, that's so funny. I remember doing the same thing. Like, I wouldn't sell them because we had like numbers we had to type in, so you couldn't really. It was like assigned
yeah,
to
they're like
you or
associated
whatever.
with your like student ID.
Yeah, but we'd go. I remember when we first were allowed to leave. It was like junior year, I think. They allowed you to start leaving, and everyone's like, "Let's go to fucking." I grew up with all these like rich white kids, and they're like, "Let's go to like this place," and I'm like, "Fuck!" Like I want to go, but I'm gonna have to just get like a water cup or some shit. Like I don't want to drop money at the restaurant, and then we'd just be like smoking cigarettes on the way back. And I'm like, I look back and I'm just like, damn, we were not slick. Like people would come
No.
back like super faded and be like, oh,
Yeah.
they don't know, bro. Like we're good. You're
100%.
eating Costco pizza and shit. It's like such a burn.
Frozen
looking
burritos,
back.
bro, like from 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven
Yeah.
hot dogs. I still love 7-Eleven hot dogs, even though I know they're absolutely tragic, but they just like have like a spot in my heart of that time of my life that I'll like never let them down.
Yeah, I had a realization. I was out with my friend one night in college and two guys, and one of them was like, I'm gonna get a 7-Eleven hot dog. And my other homie was like, dude, what? That's like so gross. That's the worst hot dog. And he was like, bro, hot dogs are hot dogs. Like they're all fucking gross. Like
I
this
mean,
one's just cheaper.
I'll get a lot of flack, but I'm that way with Little Caesars. Like I grew up, you can get a $5 large pizza. Like, bro, I'll go buy 3 large pizzas for $15.
Crazy bread.
Me and my 10 friends are gonna eat that easy, and it's pizza.
Yeah, for sure. That's dope. I wanted to ask you, what's the or first, how is your how does the 44 Castle stuff work now then if you have a full-time job, and what's your different, like, you guys all have the different expertise, so like how does it work as like, what makes it a collective? Like, do you guys do stuff together, or are you just all supportive of each other? Like how is that evolved into?
So it started, so most of us worked with Revolt at the start, and then and then it was just like the creative collective part and a place where like we can collaborate and post work. But due to us all being busy, like either with work, our own projects, whatever, it kind of took a back seat. It just became like a group of support, which is also sick. But we definitely have like some cool plans for next year to really like build it out and do some cool stuff for the community. And I think it'll be cool.
At Revolt, are you the designer, or is there multiple? And like what other types of creatives work at that?
So right now there's me, and then there's Rish Caesar.
Okay.
And then there's 2 4s, like primarily illustrator, because I can't draw anything to save my life, unfortunately.
Same.
I could draw type, and that's just from like years of like tagging, graffiti, and being an adolescent. But it's pretty much us 3 now, and then we have like a marketing guy, Smith, who kills it with like visuals, does all the videos and stuff. And then we have like the business people, creative directors and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely like really built out, and we all like definitely play a role. And it's cool because like we'll get projects that are individual based. Mm-hmm. Then we'll get like a campaign where like we'll all pitch in and like collaborate on the campaign, which is sick.
Yeah, that sounds like, I think you feel that way, you were saying about like the freelance things, because of you have like such a dope setup like that. I think people feel the freelance way because they're working as like in-house or something, or something more dissatisfying.
When I worked in the cannabis industry, it was in-house in an office. And I fucking hated it. I was late every day. I would take 1.5 hour lunches. I got to a point where like, I also wasn't getting paid well. It was like pre-legalization. So it was like under the table. I was getting paid cash. And at one point I was like, I could just quit and, just freelance, and I'd probably make more money because I wasn't making anything, especially living in LA. You're
doing like packaging for like carts and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember packaging. That had such an era to it. Like the aesthetic was similar to what we were talking about with like the remixes and stuff of like Sour Patch Kids.
That's why I was so good at it. And that's why I loved it. It's because like it was just like biting Supreme and turning it into, like an 8th nug brand, like a weed brand or something.
It'd be a box logo. It'd say like So Dank or Sativa or some shit. Like,
or I remember when those like Supreme carts came out, and I was like, that's genius, bro.
Yeah,
because they were literally cartridges with the Supreme logo on it. And I was like, sure, the company's not gonna last a year, but you'll probably make $1 million, just off of that,
Just so you get that cease and desist, you gotta race the clock.
And then you just stop selling, and you're like, like back then, like the owners of these companies were like so incognito that like you would never guess who they are or like what type of people they were.
Right. What are your plans for the human resources stuff?
So that is the thing I'm doing with my buddy Ed, who runs Boys Archive, and Lewis 2-4, who I also work with. And that's just kind of like our own fun side project to just pump out like just stuff we vibe with. Cause
Hmm.
I've been doing merch and like apparel design for so many years, but I've never like released anything on my own just because I know the headache that's behind it. And I just
Hmm.
like don't want to deal with it, you know?
Right.
But yeah, it should be cool. Like we just want to release like little capsules, like a tea and random bits, like low quantity.
Is the vibe of it gonna have this aesthetic similar to what you did originally with the kind of furniture IKEA like remix, or is that just
That yeah, so
that
that is
collection?
just like that theme for
Okay.
like those garments, and then like every drop or whatever would be like a completely different vibe, and different
Mm.
theme.
So it's kind of be like a fluid like branding. Like each drop will kind of change the look of the brand for that
Yeah,
period
and
of
it'll
time.
yeah, and I'll kind of go back to like logo flips and like I joked about it, and I'll because people were like, "What if you get a cease and desist from IKEA?" I was like, "I'll print the cease and desist on a T-shirt." It was a
Yeah.
joke, but just stuff like that, you know, like traditional like streetwear flips and just fun stuff.
I hate how it's hard because I feel like I have somewhat of a responsibility not to encourage people to do like the worst stuff, but I hate when I'm using something that may not be completely allowed, like some kind of, brand or something that would cease and desist. And I get all these comments or YouTube comments or Instagram, like, how are you able to do this? Like, what are the rules? And I'm like, I don't want to respond because then it's the admission of guilt. So I'm just going to be like, do whatever you want. But like I did when we did the Stranger Things thing,
But yeah,
uh, people were like, how are you allowed to? I'm like, I'm not allowed. It's just yeah, we're designers, but like I still have this like DIY like punk like roots where I want to just do this and I don't really care about the what the like design professional community has to say about it.
yeah, like I'd say like comfortably, my entire career is based off of like bootlegs.
Yeah.
You know, like even when I wasn't a good designer, like Travis Scott would release an album, and I would just for fun make like an entire rollout of like merch,
Hmm.
poster, and stuff, and I'd use it for content. And but now everyone, I feel like because there's a lot of like clinical stuff on TikTok regarding design, so everyone thinks it's like so black and white and so yes or no that like the Stranger Things, people take it for face value and they're like, wow, you worked on this, but like how are you able to do this without like getting sued? Double edged sword because I know I have like friends and know people who have gotten good gigs off of making bootlegs,
Right.
uh, and off of like making like I guess like fan art, you know?
I interviewed this dude. He worked on all this like bootleg stuff that was like Grateful Dead and Black Flag stuff. His name's like Jeremy Dean. And he did that so much that John Mayer hit him up for like the Dead and Company and was like, "Can you do stuff for us?" And he was like worried, like he thought he was gonna like narc on him or whatever. And basically, instead of dissolving his bootleg brand, it was called like I forgot exactly what it's called, but the logo was literally like mixing punk and Grateful Dead was the dead head like skull with the Black Flag bars in the middle. Instead of them being like, no, you're for us now, they just bought like they just let him have that subsection, like the Carhartt whip of their Dead merch is
That's
now
sick.
official of their thing. And
Yeah.
that's the dope way to approach it because Grateful Dead's whole thing was bootleg, so they went
Yeah.
back to their traditions and everything.
That's insane. That's super sick.
Yeah, because he was telling me too, like Greg Ginn, his favorite band's Grateful Dead, which is funny because he's a fucking like legendary punk artist or whatever. I found that some of the best people in a certain genre, they don't even like they listen to other shit. They listen to classical or jazz or
Yeah.
things like that.
It's crazy too, because like especially, I don't know if it's just because it's like a resurgence in trend, but you'll see like a lot of like pop stars and stuff say their favorite band is like uh Straight from the Path or something, you
Yeah,
know, and it's just like so odd.
yeah.
Uh,
Tom
but it's
Holland's like, I
sick.
love Knocked Loose or some shit,
Yeah.
and you're just like, what?
And I think that's sick. That's the one thing I love that like hardcore and that whole like genre of music is coming back due to TikTok
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like after like 2013, 14, there was just like this stagnant period of just nothing. Like
Right.
the bands realized like they weren't making that much money. There weren't any shows. Venues were closing.
Yeah. That was like the end of that is when I was like the most involved in it, probably in like high school was like for me was 2012 to 2015. So I was going to Chain Reaction and like the observatory. I feel like Orange County, how whack it is funny because the juxtaposition, like their hardcore scene's so dope.
I hated Chain Reaction so much just because it was such a mission. Like when you're like 16, 17. I
Yeah.
was like from San Fernando Valley, and like getting to
Right.
Anaheim is a fucking mission, bro.
Hmm.
So you do have to like find a ride. But and Chain always had like the best artists or the best bands play. Yeah, I grew up around the corner there was a venue called the Cobalt. And
Mm.
so I started going to shows there, like punk shows when I was in like ninth grade. And then I was like, all right, this is crazy. And then as I grew, the bands coming grew. So I started seeing like Backtrack and like
Hmm.
Counterparts when they first came out, and like Despised Icon, My Children, My Bride. It was
Yeah.
really sick. And I feel like even like that merch culture got me wanting to make t-shirts.
Well, they did a lot of the logo flips too. They'd be ripping
Yeah.
off Thrasher all the time. I remember I used to have a Rotting Out shirt that was just the Thrasher pentagram on the
Yeah.
back.
I have that shirt too. And I thought it was like the sickest shirt I ever had.
Yeah. Dude, that band was crazy. That's probably one of the craziest shows I've seen. And it's funny because their music has a lot of energy, but it's not heavy in the way that like screaming is heavy. It's just
Yeah.
aggressive. And with like that thrash shit, when I saw the big ass like Wally type size dudes in the pit, I was like, we're gonna get fucking destroyed in here with these guys.
Yeah. Agreed, bro.
Um, it's funny we were talking about how that's so rare, to the like the crossover of what we both do and liking that. Like I don't know a lot of people that know about that
Yeah.
too much or whatever.
Same. That's why I've talked to like Jackson Green
Me too.
quite a bit about it, just because I know like he's from Philly and was into the hardcore scene. And we talked a good amount about it just because like it's rare to find somebody in the creative field that also like you can reminisce on stuff like that, which is really
Right.
sick. Because I tell some people like about going to hardcore shows, and it's just like so above and beyond like their comprehension of like what a hardcore show is.
Mhm.
Like back then it was like normalizing violence, which is like pretty fucked to say, but that's what it was, you know?
A few last things. You were doing a lot of the vintage like editorial ad type stuff, and I've
Yeah.
done stuff like that too. But I remember you doing it a lot, like a good time ago, calling back to like that golden age of advertising area. And I remember looking at them in college and stuff when you were doing them. And did you foresee that like style becoming such a mainstream like trend again? Like how all these just normal brands are kind of using it now?
No. Like
Yeah.
at the so I grew up at my grandparents' house, and they were antique collectors.
Uh,
So like my grandfather would always have like these framed old Pabst Blue Ribbon posters, like bottles and stuff, and I always just thought the texture of them was like so sick. And then so like once I learned how to use Photoshop and like what I was doing, I was like, how can I recreate this as close as possible, but create it with something that like either doesn't make sense or something for like a new modern take on something that looks old. And I did that for a long time. Like I did like the advertisements and like VHS covers. And then I have like this toxic trait where like once somebody else starts doing something, I just like axe it and throw it in the bin. And I just like kind of move on.
yeah.
But now we're at a point in time where like there's so many artists that like you can't do that. You kind of just like have to like cycle through and just like
It's funny how a lot of these styles are obviously like derivative, of
Mhm.
vintage or retro, whatever you want to call it. And then I see sometimes, no one specifically, but designers saying things like, why didn't they hire me for this? Like, that's my thing or whatever. Or like, I'm a vintage, like I do this style, like at whatever brand, like what's this or something, like you stole my shit. And I'm just like, we all stole that,
Yeah,
like
I
from
mean,
all the art directors from like the Mad Men days or whatever.
I feel like now especially, it's so hard to have like a particular niche to where like somebody will go to like one certain person for one thing. Which is what I tell like younger people. I was like, learn something and then learn something else. Because like you can make 1,000 posters and then you just make posters, but if you can broaden your horizon, like sure, you know how to make like a vintage ad, but then now try to make like a modernism, like a modern logo. And then once you figure that out, make like a t-shirt that's tasteful and not just like slapped together. And then learn, just like keep moving your mind. And
Yeah.
just because it's so deep, bro, like the more you learn, the more advantage you have as like, if you want it as a career, I think.
I think social media has it. If you do well on it, it pigeonholes you because you like the feeling of it doing well again and again and again. So you'll fall into this trap of like, this is my style, and this is what I do because it'll work every time. And it's funny because I'm a lot more similar to you. I used to try all these different things and I was scared that was bad. Oh, I want a style. I want to be like this dude
Known
who
for
only
one
does
thing,
this thing. That's so cool. And then I realized, but now I get to, the part I hated about working at a job was doing the same shit, working on the same brand every day. Now that I feel kind of diverse in what I can offer, when people hit me up, I don't say like, sorry, bro, I only do like script type or some shit,
Yeah, or like, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So I think the whole like jack of all trades, master of none thing applies to some people, but it's only if you're like not serious about it. Like you can get good at a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I don't think it's true that you have to be like the best at just this thing and only do that.
Somebody told me like, I can't remember who told me, but somebody was like, you never have to be the best at anything. You just have to work harder than most people. And that's something that stuck with me. And I think that like it almost plagued me in working as hard as I do.
Yeah.
I also appreciate it. Like I'm appreciative that I am able to like work, and sometimes I do wish I had an off switch and I could like step away and not care. But
like we were talking about, I sometimes think that's the price of the advancement in something that you really like is that feeling. Like you have that feeling because you're good, not because you're bad. Like that's what the biggest realization. Like in people that are genuinely, what's the word? Oblivious maybe, or like delusional about some subject, they're the ones that don't have imposter syndrome. They're like, yo, I'm fucking sick. Like I'm the best at this or whatever.
Yeah. And I feel like with younger people, it's hard. I feel like imposter syndrome is almost like an essential to like humble yourself in a sense, regardless of like what you've done, what your credits are. Just because it like grounds you,
Yeah.
It'll like make sure your ego's in check.
Right. Because I've talked to some of like the people that I look up to the most, and they're super chill, and not on the
like
pod specifically, but I've talked to other people that I don't know, I would hold them at a less high regard than this other person, and then they kind of like big time me, and I'm like, oh, all right, well, this is weird because I was approaching you, I thought, as a peer, and now you're like, yeah, bro, I'll see what's up about it or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay,
like, bro, just have a normal conversation.
Yeah, for real.
It's crazy.
One of the last things I wanted to ask you is, I know you do post a lot of or more in the past, you're saying like the concept work and your own personal stuff. Like I remember you did, the Hot Wheels, Travis Scott, and all those things. Yeah. Do you think for like younger designers coming up, that whole process of like doing your own thing rather than just client work is like pivotal in like getting you better as a designer?
Yeah, I mean, I've told people like in the past, like somebody will message me and like, how do you get clients? I'm like, don't take them. I literally tell people to go work a 9 to 5 and hate their job because I feel like that's important. You have to like figure out what you hate before you can do what you love and know that you love it. You know what I mean? Because if you're like 16, 17 and you're just trying to like make money straight out of high school on design and you haven't worked a 9 to 5, it's almost more stressful than working a 9 to 5. Because then you're like, okay, I can't make it. And then you realize like in 6 months you haven't made any money. You go get a 9 to 5 and you never touch design again.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Because if I would have tried what I'm doing now, then I would have fucking ate shit because my shit
Yeah.
was awful when I was in college and things like that. Like I was still trying to learn how to use like Illustrator and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like I definitely recommend younger people to like learn to design with a paycheck,
Mm.
and just have fun, you know?
I also think it's important for people to actually work as a designer at a place where they make you just do things you don't want to
Yeah.
do. Cause like
100%.
then you know what you like and don't like. And for better or for worse, like when I was a brand designer at this company, Art of Sport, like I was doing like photo shoots and shit. Like I was messaging people about random like startups like that. Like you wear a lot more hats and I didn't like it sometimes, but I had to do it. It wasn't like, I don't want this client or whatever.
Yeah. It's not like you could turn it down. They're like, well, you're going to do it.
Yeah, for
Until you
real.
figure it out. That's like another thing that like a lot of like successful like social media designers
Hmm.
will have, like you'll want to commission them for like a project or like that you're working on or whatever. And it's like some of them are just social media designers
Mm.
in the sense like they're not very good at taking direction or because they haven't worked in the space in a sense or like worked to like some degree of having to take direction or like attribute their style into somebody else's brand, which I feel is like super important to learn.
Yeah, I think the biggest con, or maybe not weakness, maybe to some of those people that are really talented at like specific things and on social media is they haven't, what's the word, like made their process like a real like systematic thing. Like this is how
Yeah.
I talk to a client. This is how I get paid. This is how I do a contract. This is how I work with them. This is what I do about revisions. And then they
Yeah.
just get overwhelmed and then they're on Twitter like, fucking I hate my clients or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's like,
so it's like if you what is it? If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. That type
Yeah.
of shit, you know?
exactly.
Well, other than that, that's all I kind of had for you. And I just want to say it was dope finally chatting with you and it was nice having you on, man.
Yeah, likewise, bro. I'm glad this finally happened for sure.
Oh yeah, everyone go check out Jaked Up on Instagram and what's your Jake Pressure? What is your Twitter handle?
1-800-XO.
1-800-XO. Get that and we'll see you guys next time, everyone. Peace out.